Welcome to Aren't You Tired Of podcast with my co-host Mark Benton.
Hey.
I'm Patti Johnson. Y'all, it's graduation season.
It is.
It is. If you are on socials, you're seeing all of the graduates. You're in Target. They've got all the graduation cards are out. And you may think, well, I don't have a new graduate or I'm not graduating. Why are we talking about this? You know, graduation is one of those times in life that you think, what do I want to do next?
Yeah.
What's important to me?
Yeah.
And you have and of course, your graduation, you have things, just your life's wide open.
That's right.
But we want to think, hey, we should all be doing that. We all have those times, you know?
I think so. I think graduation time shouldn't just be for the graduate.
No.
There are messages and changes and rites of passage that I think we can all learn from. Right?
Agree. So we're going to talk a little bit about what would our commencement speech be to ourselves right now that we can take and go use. So I'm curious for you, Mark.
Yeah.
You picture back to either high school or college graduation.
Yeah.
What little thought is floating through your mind?
About my high school graduation?
Or college, either way.
Yeah, well, college graduation was what you expect for me. You know, it just, you got there, you're going across the stage. What I think a memorable thing is about my high school graduation is our class president. I won't say his name, but he got into a little altercation before commencement, and so was detained and was not able to be there for his speech. And so I was actually president of the student body, so student council, and he was
Look at you, Mr. BMOC.
I know, but here's the thing. So our principal said, "Can you give the speech?" And I was
when
like,
did this happen?
Like, this happened 15 minutes before we started walking.
Holy smokes.
Right. So I had to get up there and make the welcome speech impromptu right in the moment. And it was nuts. It was wild. Right.
We are gathered here today.
Friends, cousins, aunties, neighbors, welcome. Yeah.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. Obviously don't remember what I said because I probably blacked out. But yeah, that was funny.
That was funny.
Yeah.
Well, I was one of 4 speakers at my graduation, but it was short and I knew it ahead of time. Okay. So there's no stress. No stress.
No stress.
Yeah, in terms of my high school, it's funny, my high school graduation, I have this image, and they were I grew up in a small town, Ponca City, Oklahoma. I have this image of a big carload of girls, probably at A&W, I think. And do you ever have those times in your life when you think, I'm going to make a mental snapshot of this moment and I'm not going to forget it.
Yeah.
I did that.
Yeah.
And I remember that night. I remember being like, things are never going to be the same again. And I was accurate on that. I also remember thinking, I got this thing all figured out. Yeah. I knew exactly what I was doing.
We're going to do and all the things.
Clueless. Yeah. Had no idea I was clueless.
It's interesting you talk about that mental shot because I can't remember what I said in that high school welcome speech.
That's pretty impressive.
But I have a snapshot of the crowd. Like I see
you
it.
Remember it.
I remember
it. That's a great memory.
Yeah.
That's a great memory.
Yeah.
So we want to take those memories and say, okay, well, how many of us are doing what we thought we'd be doing?
Yeah.
What kind of would we be talking about in our commencement speech to ourselves? And before we jump into that commencement speech, it was funny. I want to just tell y'all about this book I've been reading. And do you remember Jim Collins?
Yeah, Jim Collins. He did the
Good to Great.
Good to Great, yeah.
Like 20 years ago.
Has it been that long? Okay.
It has been a long time. But I can remember there was a season where everybody was quoting Good to Great. It's like, this is how you're going to be good to great.
Yeah.
And Good to Great quotes in Good to Great, they said. So he was everywhere. Well, he's written a new book and done a little research. And there are a few little concepts in that I think are kind of relevant to this. And one of them is that we have a number of cliffs in our lives.
Cliffs, okay.
Cliffs. And cliffs can be happy cliffs, like a graduation.
Yeah.
Probably happy.
Yeah.
You know, after you gave the speech, you're like, hey, let's go. Let's go.
That's
you're
right.
happy.
Yeah.
But there are also cliffs of like empty nesting. We have an episode where we're talking about that in one of our other episodes.
Yeah.
And it could be loss of a loved one. It could be end of a relationship. It could be you've been in a great big job and then your job gets eliminated and your whole identity. So we have many, many cliffs in life. And graduation's one of them.
Yeah.
And after that cliff, there's fog. And he describes fog as that period of kind of uncertainty or lack of footing. Like I don't feel like I know exactly what I'm going to do next.
Yeah.
Graduation's one of those times. But I thought, that's a good kind of context for the fog's okay.
Yeah.
And kind of set us up in graduation as we think about what we would say to ourselves in commencement speech.
That's a great setup for a commencement speech.
Well, I think it kind of clicked with me. We've been talking about graduation. I was reading this book and I thought, that's a good way to think about it. So I'm curious, like, if you were giving your own commencement speech now, if you're jumping off the cliff, right, no matter what's going on in your life right now, what would you say to yourself?
Yeah, what would I say to myself? Well, I think that one thing that comes to mind immediately, and this runs through my head a lot based on where I am in life and the things, we, my wife and I, we are empty nesters. We have an elderly parent that lives with us, and it's easy for me to just kind of lock into all of that and just say, this is what it is.
Yeah.
So one of the things I think that I'm probably right at the edge of a cliff is what's next.
Yeah.
And looking at what's next with anticipation, with confidence. And I know that I don't have certainty about things, but I think one of the points that I would make is, where can you get clarity on things? And so that's one big thing that comes right now, that I don't have certainty about some things, but I'm certainly trying to find clarity.
Yeah. Or what you are certain about. That's really, you're dealing with, in other words, your graduation speech or commencement speech, how do you figure out that big next cliff of life? And how do you make that leap? Yeah, I got it. Mark and I are going to go back and forth and hopefully give you some things you might think about. I'm curious, all of you listeners, think of what you would be saying to yourself, right, as we're doing this. Okay. I'm going to mention the great Alyssa Liu again. And if you're a regular podcast listener, you will know Mark and I, this is probably about the third time we've talked about Alyssa.
Yeah, she's the ice skating Olympian.
Gold medalist and young, 20 or 21 now maybe. And she was asked this question recently in an interview. And I really, what was the question? Was, what advice would you give yourself? Okay. It wasn't a commencement speech per se, but what advice would you give yourself when you were younger? And she said, I probably wouldn't give myself any advice. I would just say, you'll figure it out. And I thought,
but that's her vibe. That's what keeps her blood pressure very low.
It is. Yeah. I don't know how it's so low, but I kind of feel that way too. I mean, if I were talking to myself, even though I thought I probably had it all figured out, and when I was graduating in high school for sure, but sometimes things go differently than we think they'll go. Yeah. But if you have that belief, like, I'll deal with this. I will figure this out. That confidence. I thought that was one that really resonated with me.
I think that really makes sense, because I think it goes back into kind of what I was saying, is like, I don't have certainty about a lot of things, just life in general, and technology changes, and just, how we relate and how we engage. So, but what I try to get to is, it's gonna work out. I mean, we've lived enough, to know that things will work out. Yeah. They do work out. Maybe not as you planned. Yeah. But they do.
Sometimes better than you plan.
Sometimes better than you plan. And that's what I think makes everything about this opportunity, like, especially for graduates, listeners, if you have someone who's graduating or know somebody, there's almost a jealousy I have. It's like, they're starting out new. Oh, right?
Wide open spaces, which I know scares them half to death. I know it scared me half to death. Like, what am I doing? Yeah. Okay, I'll give one. Yeah. A little lighter. You know how when you're in high school, especially college, your friends you're hanging with your friends. Yes. Probably too much, right? It's just a constant, what are the friends doing? Where are you going? What are you doing? And I think, sometimes as we start adulting. Yeah. I mean, you just get too busy. Yeah. Oh, the couch doesn't look very good. Yeah. I don't think I want to have people over. Yeah. And I think that losing that sense of, hey, you want to go do this? Let's go do that. The spontaneity and making time for friends. You know, I think that's one thing I would say is, don't let life's obligations become so heavy that you don't go hang out with your friends. You know what I mean?
I think that's important. And to that, what comes to mind for me is having different people in your circle.
For sure.
You know, people that think differently from you, people that have different experiences. I remember I had a good friend in college that wasn't born in the United States and had a great perspective on life and living. And, you know, his family situation was very different, you know, from mine. And I really learned a lot from him that I think but he wasn't someone that I probably would have been friends with, you know, if I hadn't, you know, been in a dorm situation and you're around all these different people. So I think the other advice I would give is the importance of, you know, being in a place and being open to learning just all different kinds of things and then continuing that learning journey, you know, as long as you have memory, you know?
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. And you're taking make time for friends. And a lot of them.
Yeah.
And not that they don't have to all be just like you.
Yeah.
For sure.
That's true.
Okay, let's do a couple more here.
Okay.
I'm going to do a couple more little commencement speeches, which, see, don't you wish you'd had these tips? When you had to go up.
Yes.
We could have slipped these to you.
I wish somebody would have just pushed me maybe a little index card and had little full bullets on it.
Yes.
I could have talked from, You
could have done it.
Yeah.
You know, there's so many good commencement speeches out there right now. I've been seeing, you know, Eric Church. Do you know who Eric Church is? He's a country singer. I'm not a big fan.
Yes.
Some of my
Eric
friends
Church.
are big fans.
He
killed it at UNC.
Oh, really?
He went up with his guitar.
Oh, okay.
And
That's different.
talked about how the 5 strings of life and had to play a little song.
He did a little melody brought a little. But you know what? Here's the thing I like about that, listeners. I haven't listened to Eric Church. I do know who he is now that you bring him up. But he used what he knew to bring different stories.
Yes.
And bring different learning. And I think that that's something that when you get to a point in your life where you know, this is why I was created.
Yeah. This is who I am.
This is who I am. This is why I was created. And I'm doing that thing that just brings me joy, brings me energy. That is such a valuable gift because I think some people come to it early. And some people, it might take them a lifetime. And then I think, unfortunately, maybe some people never get there.
They never get there. And
so that's important.
It is important. And I think those, I would encourage you, go listen to some of those. I mean, they were so inspiring, some of those graduation speeches. I'm kind of going off a tangent there. But okay, a couple other lessons. Well, let's talk about one of mine. I don't know if y'all can relate to this, but stop being so dad-blasted self-critical.
Oh.
And I think it's hard on myself inside my head.
Yeah.
You know, oh, not enough this, not enough that. And oh, you should be doing more of that. And, you know, and I think I've talked before on this podcast about perfectionist tendencies and far from perfect. Yeah. But, you know, when you have those, and I still work on that, like, to stop. And I think, but especially when you're as a younger female coming into the business world, I was really a lot of like self-talk and critical talk. And so I think that would be one thing I would say is that to stop it. If again, I know listeners, if you have some of those habits that you think you would say to your younger self, don't do that to yourself.
Yeah. You know, one of the things that's an important one, and I think we can all benefit from it and learn from it. I too, you know, have been critical of myself. I used to have a leader that would always say, "Be kinder to yourself." Yeah, be kinder to yourself. And recently, I don't say this out loud, so
but you're about to.
I know y'all are the first to hear this. So I think in my head, I'm like, what would today Mark tell then Mark?
That's the question.
Right? What would today Mark tell then Mark? And I'm learning from that, you know, and so I've not been shy, and I absolutely endorse people seeking tools and support for their mental health. And so, you know, I have a therapist, has made me a better person. And we talk a lot about what now Mark would talk and say to then Mark to be able to pull forward to do different. Right. And so, one of the things I know I end up telling my, 2 sons a lot is, when they're having a question around, this decision, that decision, because they're both in two different stages. One is newly married, and living, as a newlywed and having that. The other one has been, graduated from college for about a year and trying to figure out, his way in the world. And so they're in two different places. And I find being in that space with them, trying to share learnings with them, but also I try to do a big Socratic method with them instead of just, this is what you should do. This is where you should go.
Yeah.
I really try to say, well, what do you think about it? And what do you think that would be the impact of? And what do you know now that you didn't know? And I think, listeners, I would say if you have someone in your life, that comes to you for advice, getting to a place of being more of an ask versus a tell person is so helpful to help people build their own connections and ways of being.
Their own muscle.
Yeah, because when we are more tell and we tell people what's next and what to do, it's great and it's helpful, but it might not really be setting them up for success. And so I really try to focus on being more of an ask person.
For sure. Well, and I think we'll talk a minute about advice we give to our kids, and I think you're touching on some things there too, for sure. But you're mentioning something that I would put on my list. I don't know if I can say this right clearly, but I kind of learned, begin with it sounds end in mind. I'm like going back to Covey and all that.
Yeah.
What is the end game you want?
Yeah.
And then say, I'm going to figure out how to make that work instead of especially when you're younger, all those little bitty decisions. Well, what about this? Well, what about that? Well, if I don't do this and if I don't do that, they feel huge. But instead of saying like, okay, but this is what I want. Okay. And, I have many examples in my life. I know when Jim and I were dating, I was in Houston. He was in Dallas. My career was going really well in Houston. And Jim had 2 kids. And after, I met them, we started it was all of a sudden like, I got to come back to Dallas. It's a no-brainer. And I knew, and people were like, career-wise, that's kind of a mistake for you. And I really didn't care because I thought, I'll figure it out. And it was, Dallas is where I should be. The kids are there. And it was that mindset of, we'll make it work. And as it turned out, came out a lot better than if I'd stayed in Houston.
I think it worked out for you.
I think it did.
Patti, it comes back to something that I was saying earlier. And I think it makes the point, listeners, around this clarity over certainty.
Yes.
And you said, you kind of have the end in mind, right? But to get to whatever that end is, and that end may change a bit, it may look different.
Yeah.
You can't always be certain around all the things that are going to happen.
Back to what you were talking about.
You couldn't have been sure and certain about, well, am I going to get a good job? And am I going to be able to, are we going to find a place to live? And where would that be? And all the things. But you can get to, I'm clear on a couple of things. And I want to pull out something you said. I'm clear that I've met, this man and his family, and this is where, they are. I'm clear that I want to go there.
That's the best place for me to be.
Yeah.
If given my overall goals in life. Yes. And I can relate to what you said too, Mark, about like you talked about, you feel like I'm approaching a cliff. There's a lot of change.
Yeah.
Well, you mentioned the clarity and certainty issue too. And so I think encourage listeners to say, what are the things that you're really clear on?
Yeah.
And then just say, I'm going to figure the rest of it out.
Yeah.
Because so many decisions when you are 25, 30 feel monumental.
That's right.
I can't leave this job. I can't go do this. I can't, I can't change this thing. Well, maybe you can. You got to think if you want the things that really matter,
right.
Then you're gonna have to say, I'll figure some other stuff out.
Well, and I think in this conversation, and especially in this season of graduation, we have to be okay to embrace the F word. Failure.
We might need to embrace two F words.
Two F words.
But I'm with you.
Yeah.
You have to.
Yeah, you have to be okay with failure because, and I'm not trying to be trite or flip when I say this, but, this didn't go well. I failed, right? But nobody died.
Yeah.
Not the end of the world, And it's that whole adage, I think it's an Asian adage of, fall 7 times, get up 8.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I think there's something to that around that I think I'm coming to, kind of talking out loud here about embracing ambiguity.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if I was going to talk to, a group of people or listeners, you're sitting, in a position to, have wisdom, shared with someone, like getting comfortable with ambiguity, I think is a core life skill.
Yeah, I totally. And I think too, failure, don't look at failure so short term.
Yeah.
I think it's so funny. I'm thinking of a story, talking about end in mind. I also had, decided at one point, I was in the big job at Accenture. I was like working like a maniac trying to protect my schedule.
Yeah.
Boys were younger, kind of wanted to start a business. I thought, back to end in mind.
Yeah.
I thought, this is the only way I can have career ambition and also have some control in my life. And so I'm going to put these two together and I'm going to do it. Okay. And so talking about failure in the short term, I can remember I had been a big job in Accenture. I had a big team. I had an assistant. I had all the trappings, right? My first client, the meeting is at the Holiday Inn conference room in I won't say a very small town or in the Dallas-Fort Worth. And I am in there by myself trying to figure out how to connect to the projector. And I remember thinking, what am I doing? How far have I fallen? Yes. What am I doing? Yes. There was nobody to call, nobody to do. I mean, I figured it out, and I did. Yeah. We got it figured out. But I can remember back to if I had just looked at that day, I would have thought, what in the world? But over time, it worked, right?
But what was in that moment? Like, what was your biggest learning? Was it that I had all these, I'll call them trappings, I had all the things. And what it sounds like, it was a humbling moment.
It was a humbling moment. In one of our prior episodes, one of the best advice I got was, ain't nobody coming. Ain't nobody coming to the Holiday Inn.
Listen, you could have called the front desk if you wanted to.
Ain't nobody coming. Ain't nobody to call.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And so I think your point of you got to have a little longer horizon than, oh man, that just didn't go well, or sometimes people will take a job and they'll be, but yet it set them up for knowing, but the next thing, is what I really want.
So, one thing that comes to mind, do we have time for?
Probably. Well, probably time to shift gears.
Yeah, but I was going to say, one of the things that comes to mind is, being okay in the moment, to know that you don't have to have it all at once. I know, based on my generation, kind of a kid of the 80s, and these younger generations behind, us, they just have a different way of working and preference and looking at life. And there was this, between these generations, because you got all these generations in the workplace right now, there was a little bit of, friction, right? In, if you're traditionally, find yourself as being a Gen Xer, right? It's, I ain't got no time for no jibber jabber. You need all this feedback, or, you're worried about this, or, you're worried about your well-being. Like, nobody asked me about my well-being. But I think the lesson I have come to learn is being able to step back and say, I'm going to say this and it may not make any sense, but everything is not everything. Just being able to not take it all so seriously, to be willing to learn, as I said earlier, and just realizing that, you can learn from the most odd and unusual places and things.
Yeah, you absolutely can. You absolutely can. And I think too, we're kind of getting into this topic of, okay, well, are you where you want to be now? That's a big topic. Okay.
Yeah.
But graduation season is kind of when you think about it. You think about what were you, are we doing what we thought? I had no clue I could even do what I did. Did you?
No.
I didn't know.
Doing what I do now, doing this right now, I never saw it.
Never saw it. But in chunks. It came in chunks.
It did.
It did. I can do this. I can do that. What about that?
Yep.
And it's okay. And I think that's, we talk about advice from new graduates, which we'll in a minute. But I think that's important. The other thing that really, I'm talking about this Jim Collins book again. The other concept that really kind of, I think, is interesting for us and listeners to think about is he talks about how what we're encoded to do.
Oh, okay.
And it's not what are you good at, but it's what are you encoded to do, meaning what are you intrinsically just love doing and it just fills you up.
Yeah.
And I've been listening to Sally Field. She's been
the actress.
Yeah. And, she is in the Remarkably Bright Creatures, which a lot of people have read that book, and it's a movie now, but it's an incredible book about, anyone can get into it.
Yeah.
But so she's been doing a lot more interviews than she normally does. And Sally Field said she was talking about how she was a high school student in the late 50s.
Okay.
And how in the late 50s, women you had to smile. You didn't say anything you were supportive, you were kind, you were, all of that. And then she got to be in a high school play.
Okay.
And in the play, she got to be angry. She got to be a different person. It talked about how she just came alive.
Yeah.
And she goes, I knew that's what I was meant to do. And, some of us don't have those kind of moments.
Yeah.
You may have had it in your graduation speech. You may have thought, I'm meant to talk to the people.
I am meant to talk to the people.
Yes.
And I agree. Yeah.
And so he talks about how if you're encoded, that like if you're looking out a window and what you're encoded to do is all these constellations, right? If you look out the window and you see a lot of constellations, you're like, I'm in alignment with what I'm supposed to be doing. If you look out the window and it is, there are no constellations. Like for you, Mark, I'm going to go out on a limb and say, if you were looking out the window and you had become a CPA, given all your talents and gifts, the window might have been. It might not be your thing.
Yeah, I would have been staring out that window for days.
You were not encoded.
No. And people that do that, I have had CPAs help me out greatly. They're
desperately need
what
a
they're
CPA.
encoded to do. But I think the point that you're making is, if I'm tracking, is what I feel like I'm encoded to do, and I found along the way is be in a position where I'm able to help others get to clarity.
See, that's
period.
Yes.
Now
Through
it
that
shows
connection
up.
and communication.
Period. But, it shows up in different places, but being in a position where someone comes to you or you're asked to help them figure out that right next step to get to clarity is what I feel like, I was born to do. And I can be having the worst day, right, for whatever reason. And, I'm needing to coach someone because they're coming to me for, advice or guidance, or it's a situation that just presents itself. And it can be the worst day. And I noted that after those types of conversations, I'm lifted.
Yeah.
So I think that's how you know about this encoding. It's like the thing that you do that just lifts you.
Exactly. And I would encourage listeners, think back to when you were in high school, you were college. Yeah. When did those events happen for you?
Yeah.
What period of life did you feel I am encoded to do this? And I'll give you one of my personal examples on this. Let's shift to tips to new graduates.
Yeah.
But when I was in college, I was in a sorority, and we could talk about the pros and cons of sororities, but I was in one, and it was a good experience for me.
Yeah.
And I was the membership chairman, rush chairman. And
of course you were.
Of course I was. But and so I spent the summer getting to know the alums and who's coming through. But it was figuring out, along with my colleague, friend Carol, who needs to meet who. Mark's coming through and he's into golf. Yeah. Okay. Who in our house should meet Mark? We made 3 people, and it has an intricate little map. We made the Rush Week fun. All the upperclassmen hated Rush Week. Yeah. Hated it. And we made it fun. We gave them breaks. We completely revamped how we did it, played games to learn. And college was not perfect for me. I had, I had all kinds of getting used to it, and I was immature and everything. Yeah. But it was, for me, it was one of those times, I think back on it now, I was encoded to do not sorority stuff, but do what was happening that week.
Do that work.
And it went on to affect my career and everything like that. So I would encourage listeners, what were those little stories that you think of that tells you when you were encoded to do certain things? And maybe it will help you think about what's next. What cliff
I love that.
is next?
I love that. And if you're listening to this, you're walking or you're driving, whatever you're doing, and you're listening to this, take 2 or 3 minutes and think about that. Because I don't know that we always step back. Really?
Yeah.
What am I encoded to do?
I love that.
It's powerful.
Let's wrap up with any quick advice that we would give those graduates, those people who have graduates, friends, families, neighbors. What advice we give graduates today that, not looking back at ourselves, but what about today? AI, the world's changing.
One
what do
of
you
the
think?
things that I would say, and I hope this for all of you that are graduating or have a graduate, no matter what age you are, if you're going to listen to the speech.
Especially if you're giving it.
If I get the invitation. But listen to the speech. I had a season and a run, and we have more coming up in a year or so where more people are graduating. And I have just found that, those events can be long and sometimes they can be a little hard. You're sitting on these hard seats or whatever. And I actually use it as a learning experience. And I've been able to sit and listen to some great speakers, right? So I hope that all your speakers are great, but listen to the speech and don't just take it as, okay, this is what's coming up, but what things can you pull from the speech and put it into memory and try to do it, right? Because whoever that person is, they probably spent a lot of time. They didn't just get, tapped on the shoulder 8 minutes before, they needed to do the procession. They've been preparing that. And so they want you to take away something, from their words. And so what is your know, do, and believe, from hearing what they have to say? And that's my advice in general. I could say a lot of things, but that's your moment, right? And that's their moment to impart. And so honor that moment.
Got it. I think that's a great one. I think mine would be, I'm going to tie back to something that we talked about in a prior episode of bad advice. And that is, if you are the parent, the aunt, the uncle, the older neighbor, the grandparent, whatever, when you're giving advice, number one, use what Mark suggests, ask questions, help them figure it out. But secondly, don't give advice based on your own life experience or to fill a gap that you might feel.
Yeah.
How many parents do you see out there expecting their kid to be the star of the football team and they didn't make the team in middle school?
That's right.
So it's like closing whatever gap you feel and make sure your advice is really for that child who has certain gifts and talents, not reliving your life. I think that's a big one, and you see it a lot,
Yeah, I think I was guilty of it, and I'll just say this quickly, that's the reason why I went to being more of an ass than a tell.
That's for sure.
That's why, because I was like, this can't really be about me. This has to be your own path, but I can honor that and hold the space to help you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Well, we're almost out of time. I want to just really quickly, we're going to wrap up. What's the one takeaway you would encourage listeners to do based on this conversation? The most important.
Yeah, I think the one thing I would say is that it's so important during these seasons of change and forthcoming that you really. I love what you said about you had this memory of a whole bunch of friends together and you were at, the A&W, I love that. I have that snapshot in my brain of, that moment. I see all those people and we graduated outside. So it was, sun was setting. It was beautiful. And I have that snapshot. Take snapshot moments, in your life for learning and self-reflection. Spend time to do that. That's my biggest takeaway for our listeners, that we spend more time reflecting and thinking about what we want, what's important, and where we're trying to go.
Mine's kind of related to yours also is make a little time. Take some time this weekend.
Yeah.
Go, sit on the patio with a glass of wine, a cup of coffee. What have you learned since you were graduating? Are you where you want to be?
Yeah.
You're probably a different person than when, a lot different. What are you encoded to do?
Yeah.
And do some reflecting on those. And when did you feel everything was in alignment? All the constellations were in the frame out the window for me. And I think about those things and let this graduation season be a time for you to reset and think about what's next for you. The cliff, your cliff, make it a happy cliff, a good cliff.
Yeah.
That's my closing thing.
That.
So Mark, tell
that.
us what can listeners do in terms of staying in touch with us and hanging out?
Well, you can find us on Instagram at Aren't You Tired Of, and it's not you, it's YA, Aren't You Tired Of, _social. So that's on Instagram. You can listen to our episodes on Apple and Spotify, and you can send us, I'll say it, slide into our DMs. Let us know what you would like to hear, or if we've said something or there's a topic that comes up. We'd love to hear from you. Whenever we do, we try to bring those topics back up, and we will always respond.
Yes.
So that's great. And I think we'd love for you to like, subscribe, and listen
and leave us a review on our podcast. We would love that too. Thank you all. Have a great week. Enjoy the graduation season, even if you're not a new graduate or you don't have a graduate. And we look forward to seeing you next time.
All right.
Thanks, everybody.
Take care.
Bye.